Well, it's been quite the summer out at camp, and despite all the uncertainty, we were determined to use the gifts and giftings that God had given us. In May, we brought in a team at Moberly Lake that would allow us to run a program we felt confident would be allowed to happen. In June, the BC government relaxed restrictions allowing overnight camps, but at Moberly, it was too late to find staff to facilitate that style of camping. High Prairie, being in Alberta, had different restrictions, and we were able to run overnight camps there. We forged ahead, adjusting as needed and running kids camps and family camps as we were able, building relationships with both campers and staff. The effort and stress involved in making camp happen in the midst of COVID, and then seeing smaller camps and fewer campers and fewer staff, was tough. But as always, God gave us so many little victories. Like a flowering cactus in the midst of the desert, that bloom is so much more precious because of the conditions in which it came. We treasure those victories so much this year as God has made them happen in the midst of this desert that we call COVID. We were blessed with many laborers on the property side of things, and some much needed work was done around camp. Staff housing improvements, finishing touches on another new cabin, and the archery range were some of the highlights.
The board has been working really closely with the staff this year, discussing and having conversations about where we're at, what kind of changes we need to make, and how we engage in ministry. We often look back to the early days of Sagitawa and try to honor and respect the original vision and purpose. Part of the reason for this video is to get back to the original idea of Sagitawa. In the early years of Sagitawa, it was understood that there was a need to have a summer camping experience for young people, but that no single church could afford to staff a camp on their own. We all pooled our resources and made camp a joint effort. It was not a separate entity, it was not a separate organization. None of us think of our youth groups or Sunday school classes as being a separate effort. We think of them as our effort. As a family, our people make it happen and our finances are involved.
Camp should be the same way. Sagitawa is your camp, not just a camp. It isn't just a good cause that you happen to support. We know that a tree will often send out roots and spring up new trees from those roots. Those new trees are not a separate plant, it's the same plant. We want to get back to that level of interaction and involvement. The success of this ministry depends on it, and in turn, the health of the church depends on it. We want our kids to grow up in a community of believers, establishing connections and building relationships with other believers that reinforce truths and values they've learned at home. Camp involvement is often present in the lives of those youth who remain connected and involved in the church. As a general rule, our churches aren't getting any younger. If there's a future for the church in this society that is drifting away from it, we need to ensure there's a new crop or wave of Christians that get involved in the church and take over those reins. So, we need you, and you need us.
One of the ways that we can use your help is by you getting physically involved on site at camp. Now, we're not asking that you give your whole summer. We're not asking that you sign up for a week. Not even asking that you commit to a schedule. But what we want to do is we want to establish a list of volunteers that are qualified to help in certain areas. So you might be on the list as somebody that can help in the kitchen. There would be a head cook in place, but somebody to help prepare food. You might be on the list of people that is qualified as a lifeguard. You might be able to teach one of the skills, and Sagitawa would help with the training for that so that you would be equipped to do that skill or that activity. The trouble that we're running into is that we're doing kids camps during the week, and then we have church camps that are coming out on the weekend. And we're using the same staff to do both, and some of them are burning out at times. And it can vary from week to week how hard a week they've had with the kids and whether they can handle doing a church group on the weekend. But in those situations where some of those staff feel like they're getting burnt out, you would be somebody that would be on call, and the staff would be able to phone and see if you're available this weekend or on a given day to come out and stand on the dock for a couple of hours while the kids swim or go help in the kitchen. I guess the picture that we have for it is that it's an opportunity for our churches to really get involved and serve the other churches. When the church comes out for church camp on the weekend, they're being served by members of the other churches in our community. It kind of goes back to that original picture where all of us collectively are a community and this is our camp. So that's the idea that we have for being involved on site. At times, there aren't a lot of places where you can really get involved in ministry. What opportunities do you have outside of your church for your community? The other place that we could really use your help is in our finances. Like any business or any household, you have a predictable income, you've got a predictable list of expenses. You pair those up and you're fairly stable from year to year. But then something like COVID comes along and really changes those numbers for you. We've certainly seen God's faithfulness through your giving, and that has been very stable. But the revenue that we've had through user groups and through kids camps has dropped off significantly because of COVID. We look forward to next year. We're optimistic that we'll be able to run kids camps as we have in the past and that our revenue will be back up again. But we're at a point now where our funds are low and we can't make it through to that summer season without more help from you. We've got a team on site. We've got Tassie and Brady and Ruthie, and those people have stepped up, and being involved in camp the way they are is a significant sacrifice. And I feel that it's our responsibility to support them. And when something like COVID comes along, those of us that can need to step up and contribute in a greater way to bridge the gap. I really do see it as a gap. It's just from now till that summer season when that revenue comes in. A lot of you give already and give to the point that you can't give more, and you have other places that you give, and we appreciate that. But we also know that there are those that would want to know if camp is in a tight spot, and they have the ability to step up and give more. So that's what we're asking for right now, is for those of you that can, to help us bridge this gap between now and next spring so that we can show our support to these staff.
Now girls, do you love your Jesus deep down in your heart? Yes, I love my Jesus deep down in my heart. Deep, deep, oh, deep down now. Deep down in my heart. I love my Jesus deep, deep, oh, deep down now. Deep down in my heart.
I think it's pretty obvious that God's hand has been on the ministry of Sagitawa for the last 50 years. I think as long as we stay true to the original vision for camp, that we can be sure of His provision in the years to come. That vision is that Sagitawa is an extension of the church, and it belongs to all of us. When we step up, when we get involved physically, and we support the camp, we can be sure of that success in the future.